Diva down, we have a subgenre that has seemingly disappeared off the face of the earth. Or at least I was kind of wondering about it. Do you ever have a subgenre kind of pop into your head that faded into obscurity a little bit, or just has a couple of namesake bands that are making the big material, so you're like, where the hell did it go? Did it disappear into the ethosphere? Did the magical sock goblin get it? I'm talking about Blackgaze, which I don't think needs any introduction. You know the bands: Alcest, Wolves in the Throne Room, specifically Deafheaven, blew up in 2013 with Sunbather, which was like one of the biggest metal records of the 2010s. Everyone couldn't shut the hell up about it. But much like when any genre blows up in the metal community, you're gonna have a nice little grace period where things are incredible, and then it just kind of falls away. Maybe it's because there are other genres that replace it, get more attention, maybe people just aren't as interested in it anymore, maybe the intrigue wears off, maybe it didn't have that much to constitute it being a subgenre to begin with, maybe it's just gonna stick to its diehard fans, maybe a lot of the Hallmark bands aren't making that music anymore. That happened a lot with deathcore back in the 2010s and led it to creative bankruptcy for a while, until of course Infinite Annihilator decided to come around and just turbo fuck it into oblivion and say, okay, we're taking y'all into a new era, which thank you to them for that. It was getting very stagnant. So I started to do some research of Blackgaze. I started to specifically look into 2020's Blackgaze records and bands that were still making a little bit of a wave, as well as the bands that are still considered Blackgaze that are still releasing music. You had Wolves in the Throne Room release a record back in 2021. You have the sad DSBM type of project Sadness, which has overlapped a lot with Blackgaze throughout the years. And then of course you have Harakiri for the Sky, who released Mare, which a lot of people were excited about. But I feel like there's a common link between these bands, that they aren't really just true blue Blackgaze bands in the same way that Sunbather by Deafheaven or a lot of Alcest work were. They're a bit more dimensional, they have a bit more depth to them, they're not just one note, they're not just sticking to one specific formula to the point to where it becomes mundane and boring, which is unfortunately what I think happens to a lot of genres that fade into obscurity, because if you don't want that specific familiar itch like a drug addict, you're not going to continue going back to a subgenre that is doing nothing to push itself into the future or bring any new fresh creative ideas to the table. Which I will say, I am far more intrigued and invested and interested in these Blackgaze bands that are still doing interesting things, that are trying to do something creative, than I ever am going to be bands that are just taking the true blue approach. But with that being said, there are still a lot of Blackgaze bands that are still doing some great stuff. So I did a little bit of research from Blackgaze fans on Reddit, Bandcamp, I looked around on some playlist things on Spotify, and I was trying to discover some new music that was maybe more in the underground, and somewhere on the screen right now I'm going to put some lesser known Blackgaze projects in case that is a genre that you are interested in and you want some new music to check out. Whenever you have a genre that is incredibly idiosyncratic and niche and specific, you're gonna kind of run into some hurdles. You saw that happen with Deafheaven back in the day. Like, you had so many purebloods when Deafheaven blew up that were just getting their panties in a bunch over how it was going to ruin black metal and how it was the worst thing to ever happen to metal and it was poser culture, which I've said it once, I'll say it again. Deafheaven was not the first Blackgaze band. They were not even close to the first Blackgaze band. Blackgaze has its roots in like the 2000s. The reason Blackgaze blew up is it was the snowball effect, as I call it. Like, it was the momentum of the genre blowing up that made the genre blow up more. It got more people talking about it, word of mouth kept going crazier, publications and reviewers kept hyping the hell out of it, and so people had FOMO and wanted to get into it, which led metalheads that enjoyed it to enjoying it, polarization and controversy to put bad publicity on the name, which boosted the numbers more because it got more people talking about it and people pointing, being like, what the hell is so weird about this genre? Why is it so controversial? Why is it polarizing? I want to know what it's about. And it got non-metalheads into it because they were like, well, if this is more commercially viable, if this is more digestible, and all these buzzwords are being attached to it, I want to see if this is something I like. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But after that initial push of bands like Alcest and Wolves in the Throne Room and Deafheaven, all the way up to like New Bermuda from Deafheaven, you started to slowly but surely see a trickle where, yeah, there were some bands that were stepping up and getting some more acclaim. I would say Harakiri for the Sky is one of the most namesake bands of the genre now, even though they weren't really that big then. I can't see a period of time where Blackgaze is suddenly gonna have another record that does what Sunbather did, because I don't think the genre is particularly set up for that sort of success. It's a micro genre, it's meant to be a micro-genre. And there are other genres, like Blackgaze, that are more popular and produce more records that people are just more interested in. Not the least of which is atmospheric black metal, one of the biggest black metal offshoots. Blackgaze blew up because of how much of a freak show it was, because of how weird it was, and off the beaten path, in the same way that Bell Witch's Mirror Reaper blew up for funeral doom metal because people were like, what the hell is this? If you weren't so far down the rabbit hole of metal, and if you weren't a die-hard encyclopedia for every micro-genre and movement, you didn't know what the fuck funeral doom metal was, in the same way no one would know what Blackgaze was before it became a term that was tossed around willy-nilly a ton, and now it's embedded in the lexicon of metal music. And considering Blackgaze was already a hybrid genre that was a mixture of multiple sounds into one, and now I think Blackgaze is in a position where experimentation reigns supreme pretty much, considering the bands that I see labeled as Blackgaze, whether it be older bands or newer bands, fresh on the block, I feel like a lot of them could also be considered other things and clearly take other influence and don't just pigeonhole themselves into one style, let alone Blackgaze. And I think that is overall a good thing for the genre, and I feel like it existing in this space is perfectly fine. But I was just curious to kind of figure out what happened to Blackgaze. But what are your guys' opinions of this topic? You can let me know down in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.